Hello, I'm Becca Bell, and I'm here today to talk to you about what growth mindset is and how second chance learning fits into that, plus the benefits and drawbacks that happen from growth mindset and how it's used in the classroom and redos and things like that. Then ultimately manageable ways for a teacher to implement second chance learning and redos and growth mindset into their own classrooms. So growth mindset is when students, educators, and community members view education as a developing process that they neither have or don't have, that they are continually growing and becoming better and going along the way. Hawkindale and Fenimore discuss how growth mindset is when students value effort and view ability as a malleable skill, that they are moving forward and it isn't just either you have it or you don't, that you are able to do this or you're not, that you just need to work your way into doing it. According to the website Mindset Matters, when students believe that they can get smarter, they understand that effort makes them stronger. Therefore, they put in extra time and effort, and that leads to higher achievement in the end. And if students believe they can grow, they behave differently as well, and so they conduct themselves differently in the classroom. Students will put in more effort to succeed if they believe this is a process they can improve from, which also improves their mindset surrounding achievement and their education and success overall. When they believe success is obtainable, they are more motivated versus students who do not believe they can obtain a goal. Students who feel expectations are not within their reach, they'll feel more discouraged to even begin trying or even trying to reach those goals. This can be seen in the classroom when students shut down when given a task that maybe isn't scaffolded properly, and they instead put their head down to avoid trying to even begin trying, that maybe they'll turn to a neighbor and talk rather than trying the assignment that is put in front of them because they feel like they're going to fail even before they start, because they feel like they can't do it before they even begin. Versus students who have a growth mindset that are encouraged to view this as a moment to learn, a moment to grow, a moment to gather the skills and ask for help in order to try to move forward. Within the classroom, for the teacher especially, this is in their mindset and interaction with students in general. Students with a growth mindset are seen giving students a lot of feedback. They encourage a child to choose a challenge and encourage and increase that achievement overall. Teachers foster certain mentalities in the classroom. From that same website, from Mindset Matters, I found it really interesting. They discussed how teachers or educators with a fixed mindset for like math ability are more likely to judge students as having a low potential rather than a growth mindset than their counterparts. And they are more likely to comfort students that they perceive having low math abilities and apply kind strategies, that they use comfort-oriented feedback in which they are telling their students that their inability to succeed at math is okay, and also to attempt to make math easier by lowering their expectations ultimately. Then this is going to lead to lower motivation in those students, and the lower expectations are going to lower their performance, and it doesn't give them that same growth mindset, that same strategy-oriented feedback that teachers with growth mindset give to students. Teachers with fixed mindset approach to comfort students for their lack of ability, which then they ultimately lower their expectations. Meanwhile, teachers with a growth mindset provide feedback to students to grow and trying to help them to learn to achieve those expectations rather than lowering their expectations. Second chance learning. So this concept of growth mindset is seen in Carroll County Public Schools through the policy of second chance learning. The school system views it as an instructional strategy for increasing student mastery of course content. This includes reteaching, additional practice, and an opportunity to demonstrate new learning on another assessment. That's straight from the school website. This type of remediation is meant to better prepare students for the world beyond school and development of proficiency of skills content. This also allows educators to have communication of learning, as well as to differentiate for students who learn skills at different paces, because through second chance learning, there's remediation and retesting, which allows for mastery of content. So benefits and drawbacks. There are way more benefits than drawbacks. So let's talk about the benefits first. Let's start with the positives. So according to Hawkindale and Fenimore, they say that the kind of active retesting and redoing is going to foster grit in students, that students will, when they're faced with a difficult task, are going to persevere, that they're going to see this adversity, they're going to overcome obstacles, and they're going to have the grit to move forward. Students, when they're initially faced with a difficult task, then are going to become less afraid to try the task because they know that they can get back up, they know they can try again, that if they fail the first time, that's okay, that's a learning experience, and that they can move forward to do better the next time. Then they're able to reach their goals based on the grit that they have achieved more than other characteristics throughout their life. We also see Hamilton was another article that I read, and they implemented these strategies straight into the classroom. That when they tried out retesting in their classroom, they found that they eased the anxiety and pressure surrounding tests as well as the end of the semester. Students then also began to view their teacher as a collaborator in the learning process rather than someone who's trying to catch them in bad habits and just trying to fail them and trying to make them look bad. Ultimately, with this growth mindset and with second chance learning and redos, students are to view assessments as a part of the learning process and a way that they can receive feedback in order to improve and moving forward to master the material, rather than this moment of the end of a unit, the end of a semester, where they are going to be tested and they may not know what's on there, they may not understand, and so they're going to feel overwhelmed and like it's a gotcha kind of moment. And there was a really interesting Washington Post article that I read that offered both sides of the redo and retesting, but it discussed how the proponents of retakes believe that it allows students who struggle with test taking another chance to master the material, which then helps them in their overall retention, that it is going to allow for that mastery of the material because students learn at different paces. That some students, it just takes them longer to grasp a concept, a skill, and it doesn't mean they're less intelligent. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. It just means it's going to take them a little bit longer. And this allows them to repeat the material, to take things at a different pace, so then that they can master the material and moving forward. And again, this just allows for mastery of the material, that, you know, it's not okay that you didn't learn it. You should go back, you should really learn the skill and the content and moving forward, that it's not something that you can just breeze through and it's not a big deal in moving forward. For drawbacks, there was a very interesting Edutopia article that I read that again offered both sides of it, but it discussed the idea that teachers are concerned that when they're giving the option of makeup tests, students are going to game the system, that they're concerned that students, when they fail the initial test, that they're going to see what it looks like and that they're just going to learn how to take that test, and they'll get to the retest, the redo, and they're just going to regurgitate the correct answers later. That it's okay that they failed the first time because they're just going to see the same test later, that this doesn't allow for subject mastery or personal responsibility for achievement, that it doesn't matter at that point. But there's ways to get around that, the gaming of the system, and I'll talk about that when I talk about ways to implement this within your own classroom. The Washington Post article that I talked about previously discusses that some parents are going to be concerned about the option of retake as on a test every time, that they're concerned about that option always being there. That's going to hinder their future success. That self-discipline isn't easy, and that, you know, teenagers are constantly trying to push the limits of what they can get away with. And so the author of that article actually discusses a specific incident with their son, where their son told them that he just retake a math test that he did poorly on, that, you know, it was no big deal, who cares, whatever, I'm just going to get a better grade the second time anyways. And so the author sits down and discusses, you know, that they were disorganized when they were studying for the test and they weren't as responsible as what they should have been, and, you know, that's why they did poorly. That they're worried about students falling back on retakes and retesting and buying themselves more time rather than really putting in the effort in the first place to budget their time, to work on study skills, to do all these things that are going to have for success in the long run. That they are not having students build that resiliency and responsibility in testing and preparing themselves for assessment. Also, retesting and second chance learning is putting more onerous back onto the teachers. There's more planning involved with this, that teachers need to create new materials or alternate plans for students in order to reteach the material or reassess them. There's also going to be more grading in general because there's more work that students are going to be submitting to be graded. And so that is going to put more workload onto the teacher for managing a full schedule they already have, and kind of that relearning and mastery that is going to be happening for students. Ways that this can be implemented into the classroom. So on this slide, I'm going to talk about some tactics that are used by Rick Wormeli, which is an expert in the field of retakes and redos. Then on the next slide, I'm going to talk about some other things I came across in that Washington Post article that teachers across the nation are using for their retesting. So the 14 practical ways that Wormeli talks about using and implementing redos and retesting into the classroom. The first one, students submit an original attempt, their original attempt, along with a new attempt, along with a letter comparing the two. In that letter, they're going to talk about what's different and what they learned from the redo. This is hoping for that reflective piece of kind of where they came from and what they're doing in the future. The second thing, teachers reserve the right to give alternative assignments and alternative versions. That way students aren't just memorizing the answers into the original test. And in fact, Rick Wormeli encourages the redo to be more demanding than the original assessment, that it should be pushing students to even higher expectations. For the third thing, redos are done at a teacher's discretion. That means they have the option and to take it away, and it shouldn't be taken for granted by parents, guardians, or students. That this is going to prevent students from gaming the system and falling back on the option of retesting. That if they're disorganized, if they don't study in the first place, if they are ignoring their responsibilities, that the teacher can take that option away from them because they had not earned it in that particular instance. 4, students submit a plan of relearning and provide evidence of that relearning before redoing their work. This is going to ensure that the student did in fact prepare for the redo and that the content has been mastered. 5, if they do not follow through on the relearning steps, they write a letter of apology to both or either their teacher, their parent, and their parents or guardians for breaking the trust of that moment that they said they were going to do this work and then they didn't follow through. 6, parents have to sign an original in any redos that have been submitted to make them aware of the multiple opportunities that have been provided and tried in order to achieve learning targets. 7, after 2 to 3 redo attempts, take a break. Students might not be ready for that particular skill or content quite yet, or maybe you need to switch up your teaching style in order to teach them that particular content or skill. So just kind of stepping back a little bit from redoing and second chance learning a little bit in order to kind of preserve yourself in them as well. 8, if students are repeatedly asking for redos, that maybe there's something underlying that's an issue that you need to investigate further. Maybe they're not ready pedagogically for the content. Maybe they're having issues at home that are kind of stopping them from moving forward. Maybe they have an undiagnosed learning disability, and those are things that you need to look into before you just keep trying to retest and reassess and have them master the material. Number 9, choose what's important in order to emphasize that when you're doing your redos. That emphasize the most important parts of the standards-based curriculum and don't necessarily do the things that are smaller. 10, allow for redos no matter what the first grade was. If they got a B or C the first time and they want to redo it in order to go further up, that's fine. If they want to achieve excellence, why should we stop them? 11, if the students are coming to you before report cards are due and you have to submit a grade, submit the grade as it is, and then the student can go back later to relearn the material in the next marking period, and this will allow you to have them show the demonstration of the mastery of the material, but also allow for a normal movement of grades. 12, in the last week of the marking period, it's okay to not allow redos. That you have to protect yourself and respect your own time as a teacher. And there's been a lot of opportunities up to that point for redos and retesting, that it's okay to kind of stop it off and say, not now. 13, record a new score. Don't average the scores. The final A student receives should be the final score. It's just as legitimate as the first grade they earned. 14, unless it's a complex assignment, allow them to do just the portions that they perform poorly on. This helps to save time for teachers and students in your grading and in them taking the test. Redos could be something even as simple as a student coming back to your desk for 10 minutes and interviewing them and discussing with them what they missed. So that Edutopia article I was talking about from Stephen Merrill discusses some other tactics from teachers all across the nation. One of them was to create mastery quizzes. This is when the teacher is going to tailor the questions that were missed in the original exam by that student. These quizzes are short. They might be 2 to 4 questions. They help students earn back the points and master the material of the things they didn't know the first time. The second thing they talked about in that article was reflective test corrections, where students reflect on and write about the questions they missed on a test. They explain what they answered, the incorrect answer. They identify their mistakes, and then they show how they affected the outcome, like how did they get to where they are. Then there is a peer-to-peer approach where students who did well on a test can create a lesson and teach those who didn't perform as well. If students who retake the test pass, their peer student and peer teacher receive extra points. And then we have reflection for retesting. Students write a reflection of why they failed, and they are going to talk about what they're going to do to improve, ultimately how they're going to prevent that failure in the future. And it has them look at the work they put in the first time, that maybe they didn't study enough the first time, maybe they spent time on something else that wasn't important, whatever. And then it talks about what strategies they used the first time, how did they study, how did they think they need to change that. This allows for that long-term planning skills and opportunities to practice overcoming obstacles, the ability to see something that didn't go well and being able to plan for how to change it in the future and what you're going to do differently. And just my final thoughts. I found this quote in the Guskey article, and I thought that was just so powerful, and I felt like it embodied the whole heart of second chance learning. That redos are the emphasis on the mastery of material and the skills and this is something that all educators should be pushing for their students to achieve. This idea should push students to master the material, not just focus on the grade they earn. They shouldn't just be obsessed with, achieving that A and that overall grade that they get. This approach should also create a better relationship between teachers and students, because it's going to view the teachers as a helpful force to the success of the students in their academics and just their overall life skills in moving forward, and that we as teachers should be emphasizing that and pushing them forward and should not be holding them back from that and helping them to move forward. The next slides are my image citations and then my overall sources. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.